Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here?
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
And welcome to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute, a podcast where we break down and celebrate the films of Gene Wilder 1 minute at a time. I'm Alan Sanders.
And I'm Walt Murray.
And we are kicking this off today officially.
Finally.
It's been a long time coming, a lot of work in the process, but we've broken down the film into our 60-second increments. We've done some research. We've contacted people, and it's time to get this rolling.
We've been down a lot of rabbit holes. We have learned more about Gene Wilder and folks in this movie than I think probably their families know.
You know, just the other day I was on the air with a buddy of ours, BK, with BK on the air, and I found myself just talking about some of the trivia, and I was like, I don't know if his eyes are crossing while we're talking about this. Like, hey, by the way, did you know? And by the way, did you know? And by the way, he's like, I don't care. He's like, I didn't ask.
Yeah, so typical BK.
I said, but it's my show. I can talk about whatever I want.
That's right. You're stuck.
But we did have a pretty good amount of research to go, and I think we're ready to start.
I think so. And just the research that we've done so far and the stuff we've learned, even in digging into these first 10 minutes or so, has just been awesome. I've had a ball already, so looking forward to where we go from here.
So it's amazing when you watch a movie or you remember seeing a movie the first time when you were a kid, or you look back and you say, well, that was a great movie, or it made me laugh, or I've watched it every now and then. When you actually have to take it on as a project, it suddenly becomes work.
It does. It does. It's almost like having a second career at times this week. But I'm excited to get going and putting some of that hard work to good use.
Well, the first story I got, the first note I have, is this movie was not supposed to be produced at 20th Century Fox.
That's right. They actually had, I don't know if they had signed papers somewhere else, but they were ready to roll with another studio and pulled the plug at the last minute.
Well, part of it was a budgetary issue, and part of it was Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder were adamant that this was going to be a black and white film. They were going to do an homage to the original Universal Pictures Frankenstein, which was, of course, Frankenstein. Then it was Bride of Frankenstein. Then it was The Son of Frankenstein, and then Ghost of Frankenstein. They wanted to shoot in that mode. They wanted it to look like it was a movie that they discovered out of the 30s. Everything about this film needed to match that kind of temper and tone, and they did not want to shoot in color.
Well, even if you go through that first minute and go through the credits, it has the look and feel of the 1931 Frankenstein. Even the lettering is the same, the overtones of the music are the same, and it really does have that same sense of the opening of the original Frankenstein.
Yeah, as we go through this opening, you've got obviously the 20th Century logo in the black and white. And then, of course, our hero, one of our heroes, but Mel Brooks, a Mel Brooks film. We have to remember, as popular as Mel Brooks is to us and to people who look back and say, wow, what a career, at this point in time, even the producers had mixed reviews. I mean, he really hadn't had like the mega hit yet.
No, and Gene Wilder was kind of the same way. He had some success.
Well, Willy Wonka was a big success for him.
And Willy Wonka hit that home run that I think allowed him to move towards this. And, of course, they had just both worked on Blazing Saddles together.
Which hadn't been released yet.
Which had not been released.
No.
So if you take either one of these two out, it becomes a totally different movie if the movie is even made. So you almost have a perfect storm of the two of them coming together and working through these ideas together and getting it to the screen.
In fact, it was Gene Wilder on the set of Blazing Saddles who told Mel Brooks, I want to make this movie and I want you to be part of it. And so just as they wrapped, they started working on the script and getting together and talking about this idea of young Frankenstein.
Well, and it was funny that he even mentioned that every night Gene just kept badgering and badgering and badgering until he finally gave in and decided he was ready to do it.
So here's a little interesting story when they talk about the creation of the script when these guys were banging it out in Gene Wilder's apartment. The story goes one night Gene and Mel got into a huge knockdown, drag-out fight. Mel throwing a temper tantrum, yelling, raging, stormed out of Gene Wilder's apartment. And Gene's sitting there going, what's going on? He left. 10 minutes later, the phone rings. He picks it up, and it's Mel Brooks. And he's like, Who was that madman you had in your house? I could hear him yelling all the way over here. You should never let crazy people into your house. Don't you know that? That could be dangerous.
That's awesome.
According to Gene Wilder, that's Mel's way of apologizing for being a...
I can see that. I can see that.
But could you imagine? I mean, two real big egos. One who's already made films and is directing. One who had an acting background and was actually discovered thanks to a play with Anne Bancroft. If you remember,
right.
Anne Bancroft and Mel Brooks were dating, and Anne Bancroft and Gene Wilder were in a play together, and Mel Brooks came to see the play. They started talking after the play, and Mel Brooks goes, "This guy's pretty funny. I want to use him," and that's how he got into the producers.
I even saw that Mel Brooks had been in World War II as a bomb diffusing tech. So he doesn't have the personality that I would normally suspect, but I think that kind of also led to his devil-may-care attitude when it came to dealing with the studios of, look, I'm not going to get blown up over this, but I want to do this my way. And I think that contributed a lot to the way that this movie ended up working out. And I can imagine those two, though, being very strong personalities with a vision, and both of them really on the rise in Hollywood. I'm sure they had some interesting heated moments.
Now, there is another story I want to talk about as we're in these this opening credit minute. The studio, 20th Century Fox, agreed, okay, we'll let you do black and white. But they kept trying to say, hey, tell you what, why don't you do this? Now that we're shooting, let's go ahead and shoot it in color, and we'll just print it black and white. And you know what? Mel Brooks the whole time kept saying, I don't trust you guys, and refused to use any color film at all. He did not want to have a chance that the studio could turn around and replace the final print of the film on him at the last minute.
That's interesting. And when you look at the way that the movie lays out end to end, it should be in black and white. It has the strongest feel in black and white. I don't think it would be as popular a movie if it had been shot in color. And frankly, the first time I saw it, which was in the early, late 70s, I didn't even really think about it being in black and white until I left, and my friend Tom, who I'd seen the movie with, said, that was the best black and white movie I've ever seen, and I kind of went, oh yeah, it was in black and white.
When I go watch this now, here we are, 21st century, I keep forgetting that he's the grandson of Victor Frankenstein.
That's right.
I keep thinking we're going back to the 30s, so it does exactly what it was meant to do. It creates this sense that we're going back in cinema history for this story.
Yeah, and it really pulls, for me, it pulls me into the movie, I think, and I guess that is some wisdom there. In black and white, you're having to fill in more, and so it's engaging the viewer more, and you feel like you're a part of what's going on there.
Well, we talked about the title credits flying by, Young Frankenstein, which, of course, the block letters, the brick with the cracks and the decay, and it goes straight to our list of characters. Of course, Gene Wilder, the star of this film, the genesis for this entire podcast.
Yeah, and obviously we've got a lot to say about Gene Wilder, and we will over time. This movie would not have been anywhere close to as good or anything had Gene Wilder not been the lead. I think he just had the right personality. You kind of see him degrade into Dr. Frankenstein. I don't think anybody could have done that in the serious comedic way that he did.
Now, I know we're only supposed to look at this 1 minute at a time, but I'm going to put everybody on a mustache alert because I swear his mustache morphs as much as Marty Feldman's hump.
I think it does. And his hair gets crazier.
Because I was watching at one point, I was like, wait a minute, it's like two little swoops, like eyebrows uplifted, and then all of a sudden it looks more natural, and then it looks like, did he have a shaving accident, and they had to like rapidly put some fake ones on for scenes?
I have to think there was some kind of
Or did it just, he literally
the
trimmed them separately one day and trimmed too much, and was like, well, we got to shoot, let's just go ahead and start rolling. But watch, be on mustache alert, because that thing morphs all the time.
Well, being someone who has a beard, that does happen sometimes. You would hope that the studio could fix that, but it does happen sometimes. But I think there was probably some intentional work there, too.
Second credited actor is Peter Boyle, who, of course, plays Frankenstein's monster. And as you hear, that violin, that was actually Mel Brooks talked to John Morris, the composer, and said, I don't care if you do a big crescendo to start, but I need to make sure we have the saddest Eastern European violin lullaby. I want you to create this violin lullaby that represents everything about the monster. I don't need him to sound menacing. He can be menacing. He can be a brute. He does obviously have issues. But at the heart, I want to make sure we're capturing the sentimentality of this poor creature.
They nailed it. Because you do feel that emotion. And Peter Boyle's funny because, as you know, having watched this movie several times as a kid, and then I probably had not watched it for a few years, and Everybody Loves Raymond came on. And I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm thinking, I know this guy. Who is this guy? And then I was like, Frankenstein. And it's amazing to see that he had such a wide range of that he could play as an actor, and especially being that big and kind of overpowering.
Well, you talk about range. The first time I remember Peter Boyle in anything was in the Sean Connery futuristic flick Outland.
Yeah,
where he
right.
played the leader of the space station who was basically on the take, and he was allowing these miners to engage in drug use because it helped their output and create. But eventually they'd go nut up and go out in space without a spacesuit on, and that doesn't do so well.
Takes care of that.
But I remember him being almost like a mafioso, just a really, and he was menacing, and he was in a mean crime boss kind of way. So his range, obviously, to go from comedy to play a drama and all the kind of roles he's had in his lifetime. It wasn't until later that I remembered him being the monster in Young Frankenstein.
Well, and you see as we'll go through, and we'll talk about this later, but he is able to emote in a way that really captures, what's going on inside the monster. And it was a good choice. Good cast.
Next name coming up here in the credits, we got Marty Feldman.
What can you say about Marty Feldman? Again, you could not have cast a better person for that role, and
Damn
he plays
eyes.
it.
Too late.
Walk this way. Some of the best work in this movie is him. And I mean, he is amazing. And
obviously known for his goofy bug eyes and being able to do some crazy things with his eyes, but I wonder if that's part of the joke with calling him Igor.
I would think so. Because
when you watch it, and when we get to that minute, I don't want to jump ahead. Obviously, Gene Wilder's character of Young Frankenstein has a problem being affiliated with the actual Victor Frankenstein, who had the problems back with raising his first monster, and so he purposely changes his pronunciation to Frankenstein. And when you first meet Igor, it's right after he says, "Oh, it's Frankenstein." He's like, "Oh, it is. Why is it not Frederick?" He's like, "Well, because it's not. It's Frederick, but it's Frederick Frankenstein." He's like, "Okay." He goes, "Aren't you Igor?" He goes, "No, Igor." So it's almost like, did he just change his name then to just be a pain in the butt?
That would be my guess.
I don't want to jump ahead, but I mean, that's the Marty Feldman. You wonder how much of this stuff was on the fly.
Well, and if it wasn't, he read the lines perfectly. With him, it would have been easy in that character, and we'll see it as we unpack this movie. It'd be easy for him just to kind of be a straight man and a sidelight, but he doesn't. He captures the scenes that he's in.
There's a movie that I hope we'll get to it eventually, seasons down the road here, where it's Gene Wilder and Marty Feldman playing in Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother.
Right.
They are brilliant together, and Madeline Kahn's in that as well. So a lot of these actors we'll see, they love to work with one another. In fact, Cloris Leachman, the next name to come up, I'll never forget Cloris Leachman. The first time I ever saw her in anything was Mel Brooks's High Anxiety.
Oh, yeah, right.
Where she played the nurse with a bit of a... what's it called? Sadomasochist, the
right.
S&M nurse.
Well, she has that look. She, again, cast well.
And Frau Blucher.
That line probably has stuck with me as much as any line in that movie. And she plays it so perfectly. I mean, her face is just great. So
Frau Blucher. And as we wrap up this first minute of Young Frankenstein, we see co-starring Terry Garr, a woman who had already had some screen credits to her name. Gene Wilder liked her and wanted to use her. And I remember during the story, during the audition, he said, and I think it was Mel Brooks was there as well, said, "We'd definitely like to use you, so tell you what, go home, work on your German accent," because she's going to have to speak with a German accent, "and come on back tomorrow and let's see how you do." And she immediately whipped out a German accent right there, like, "Okay, but if you want me to go back tomorrow," whatever she said. And he's like, "Oh, you're hired."
Yep.
And did it right then.
There you go. What can you say? There'll be a lot to say about Terry Garr as we go through. Thank you for casting Terry Garr.
Nice knockers.
Thank you, Doctor.
Before we wrap up this first minute, is there anything that, because again, we're going through the opening credits, and this is your traditional, this is the style of the Screen Actors Guild of the time. We're going to spend 3-4 minutes of just going through all the opening credits before the movie really starts. But anything, like, what was your first memory when you, in the Zero episode, you said, it was a movie you saw in the theater.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you saw Young Frankenstein for that first
time in the theater. Yeah, and I don't remember why. I was too young to see it the first time in the theater. I know it was a few years later, so it must have been, a re-showing of it. But we'll talk about this when we get into this opening scene here in a couple minutes down the road. This opening scene stuck with me throughout my life. It is a powerful, powerful scene. Even though there is comedy in it, it is a powerful and cool scene. So
it definitely set the tone for the rest of the film.
No doubt. No doubt. It sets a great tone.
Well, I remember, much like with Blazing Saddles, the first time I ever saw it was on television. So I don't remember how it was edited. I don't have enough memory of it because this wasn't in my staple of films I would go to year after year and watch 10, 20 times a year like Blazing Saddles, where I could rewrite the script to Blazing Saddles right now.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
one, I've had the pleasure of, in the last week and a half, really just watching it over and over. And then even this morning, I got up knowing, hey, we're going to start recording. I started watching 1 minute at a time, just saying, getting my brain to start thinking about just looking at the details of just this moment in time.
Well, I can't tell you how many times over the years I have said, you haven't watched Young Frankenstein? I've probably given away 4 of my copies of it because people don't return them. So we're coming up to some really fun minutes ahead.
I do remember a lot of the one-liners, and so a lot of that stuck with me when I went to watch it, but I had forgotten how much of Gene Wilder's performance takes place that it's serious. And not serious in a way to bring you down, but you're laughing at how serious he's taking himself. Because I make fun of Al Pacino, like all he does is yell now as his character, like he's become known. I totally forgot that Gene Wilder, at this point, he starts breaking out. He's yelling everything.
Oh, he's a maniac.
He's just at the top of his lungs.
Total
on all of his
lunatic.
lines. I am really looking forward to breaking this down, and it's it's our debut of the. This is episode 1, season 1, Young Frankenstein.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow when everybody can come join us for episode 2.
All right, so let's very quickly thank. We have a big thank you here that we have to put a shout out to, and that is a special thanks to Adam and Brad of Gutterballs. That's gutterballs.tv, who first analyzed a movie 1 minute at a time, and then of course Pete and Alex of Star Wars Minute. That's StarWarsMinute.com for the website, who created the daily format that so many have followed now, and we are just one of many fantastic Movies by Minutes podcasts that are out there. So you can go to moviesbyminutes.com to see a full listing of all of those, and we appreciate all the help of a lot of different podcasters who have come before us, giving us some lessons learned. And come to find out, because of our background, especially with being in broadcast radio as a side job, I've actually been asked to give some advice to some other people on interviewing and things like that. So a very cool community to be a part of.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun reading what everybody has to say, and I've got a lot of dumb questions to ask them, and they've been very, very gracious.
All right. No, that's going to wrap up minute number 1. Come back tomorrow, Tuesday, for minute number 2. In the meantime, check out our Facebook page, The Wilder Ride. It's also on Twitter, The Wilder Ride, and our website is thewilderride.com, and you've got links to all of our different social media and all the other stuff out there, including our Patreon page. Check it out and drop us a line. We try to stay engaged with all of our listeners between shows.
And if you like what you're hearing, please go over to iTunes, give us a 5-star rating. That helps our visibility. And please make sure, we don't really care what you say in the comments. We would appreciate constructive comments, but
I might care.
Stuff my mom can read would be appreciated. But if you could put a quick comment in just so that your vote gets counted, that helps our visibility, helps other people find us, and we would really appreciate that.
All right, till tomorrow. Frankenstein.